as we head into our session today. Please put your hands together as we welcome Madam Deputy Director. Karibu sana.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's always a pleasure to have MC Okari because he keeps us going. I hope you had a restful night and I hope you woke up well. It's good to see you with refreshed faces this morning, and we give all the glory to God. I've been given a very humble duty to do today, and it is always very, very difficult for someone to take you through what happened yesterday. And how many of us enjoyed the day yesterday by show of hand? How were our speakers? Thank you. It's always that very good feedback for us to hear that. And I will start, but we started the day. I will not have to speak about our paper chairs, and it's not that we don't value you, but we just need to get our take homes on what our speakers brought to us. I am trying to find the first speaker. The first speaker was Yusuf. And under the topic, let me have the journal so that I don't, let me have the journal so that I don't. Of course, we can't miss the blessings that we had from our commissioner in the fact that he allowed us to be here. He opened the seminar and he challenged us that as we leave this place, we need to leave this place when we are a changed thought, when we are changed organizations and ready to go and tackle the things, to put into practice the things that we have learned today. And that has always been our challenge. And then we had Dr. Ben Kajwang, who also challenged us as stakeholders that we start working together. And it is important that we hold each other's hands as stakeholders, from brokers, reinsurance, and as professionals, so that we make this industry a better place to be in. Moving forward, we had our first paper with Dr. Yusuf on the geopolitical and climatic changes in the financial sector. I will only touch on the summary of my take home. It could not be your take home, but you can add to what you had. And his underlying issue on the whole issue is that the world has become a global village and climate change is a reality. So the challenge to us by Dr. Yusuf is that we have to take the agri-medicine. And he talked about the agri-medicine being the effects that are brought about by the political changes, and hence the power to purchase has gone down and therefore has brought about the default in premiums, the lapse in the policies, and as underwriters, we have to swallow the agri-medicine. And he challenged us that the way to do it is to renovate, is to think about shifting from and getting partnerships with each other. He talks about mergers, he talked about acquisitions, and he talked about us deciding which areas we don't want to underwrite, which policies we don't want to underwrite. He kept on giving us examples of AIG and the way that they don't touch the carbon credits, the countries that have a lot of carbon emissions. So it's up to us as underwriters that when we see that risks are bringing losses, they are not growing our bottom line, do we still want to go to that field? And the challenge to us as underwriters this morning is, why do we continue fighting for a risk that is gross making? It is cancelled or lapsed in a certain company, but all of us are there with our tenders, all of us are there fighting for it, because I'm being pushed on the top line. So let's take the challenge as we leave this conference today. Do we want to go to that area, or do we want to innovate? Do we want to make this country a better country or a better organization? Do we want to merge ourselves if we are not doing very well? And do we need to make issues so litigious so that we end up getting to a loss? He talked to us about carbon credit. And the whole thing he told us is that as underwriters, we need to pay attention to greenwashing. So I moved, and he kept on talking about ESG, and he said it should be part of our underwriting process. So from here as underwriters, let us make ESG part of our underwriting process. The lesson to learn is to train our underwriters on the ESG framework and integrate it in our portfolios. He gave us the example of the M-Pesa, it is our very own, and he said it has sustainable results because they decide the areas to go into and the areas not to go into. So let us run those risks, let us take away what we run from Yusuf, and let's make our organization better. Then we moved on to Resri. He gave us the African perspective, and he gave us examples of the climate changes that are affecting Africa. He talked about the locusts, he talked about the floods, he talked about the drought, and he brought it to our attention that as much as we are talking about drought, the biggest risk in Kenya per se is the flood. So as we wait for the rains as underwriters, are we prepared for the floods? What we experienced during El Nino, should it happen today, are we ready? Do we know the risks that we are holding? So to us is to carry that home, and the organizations that we hold, what lessons are we going to carry? And he showed us examples of the cranes and how they use certain models on data collection to settle cranes. Are we going to reach out to the organization of risk capacity to run something from home? We'll be given the link, we'll be given the contact for Resri. So each one of us who wants to know more about pandemic, who wants to know more about the risks that we suffer, please reach out to Resri. But the summary of that topic is that climate change is real, and as underwriters, we have to hold board discussions on the impact and discuss the solutions. Moving forward to the second paper, which was on, yes.
Are we allowed to make a comment?
No, you're not allowed to make a comment. It is a take home. Sorry about that.
In that take home,
Yes.
especially where we are saying that we need to move away from some risks.
Yes.
No, we are insurers, and insurance is about risk. So if there is no risk, then it means no one will take insurance. So one of our roles as players in the industry is to come up with ways of risk management. Because for practical example, we have to say we are not going to write Kengen because their risk is very bad.
Kengen is in the house.
That's why I'm using it. No, I'm just sorry, allow me to use you as an example. If you are saying you're not going to write Kengen, and the kind of premium that they bring to the industry, then next year we say we are not going to write Power and the rest, then we will find ourselves not having any clients to insure. Because insurance is about risks. So our role as we take home and as we think outside the box is how we are going to mitigate those risks and advise the clients on risk management. Thank you.
Well said, and that's why I have said our take home is that we have to have boardroom discussions on solutions that are affecting our risks, and that is our take home. So we need to go discuss those issues that he has put across to us. On the leadership paper, we had Mr. Tom Vitoro, and his issue to us was that leadership is all about influence, and for you to succeed, you need to motivate your staff and you need to have the energy to do so. And he inspired us with the example of Arava, and we were told that for us to become good leaders and to have beautiful followers, we have to evolve from the larva to the beautiful butterfly. He also challenged us with a question whether leadership is an art or science. And he said there are many discussions to it. And according to him, the best leadership is the one that evolves with knowledge and the one that you run every day and you pick lessons, because you cannot be a know-it-all and you have to allow other people to speak, and you should not be shy. If you have people who know better than you have to know, you tap from them. And then he said, if you argue it is an art, it becomes a brain game. And therefore, for us, is we take the journey of being authentic leaders. That is what is our take home for us, to have self-actualized leaders and challenge ourselves to run the lessons of the character that you build and what people tap from you. He challenged us that we have choices he challenged us to think of what choices are we making for our teams, and as we go back to our offices, to just know that success is a series of little choices. So from here, you make your choice, what kind of a leader you want to be. And from there, we have to be consistent in whatever we are doing, and we communicate. We don't just decide issues, but we don't communicate. And in communication, his summary, he's told us on 4 things: that you have to have strong moral compass, you have to have a balanced processing, you have to have a relationship transparency, and you have to read an impact on your team. From there, we moved to Caroline. Caroline taught us 3 things, and we all kept on saying them behind her. That was trust, respect, and likability. And she also talked about the authentic leader, transparency, and vulnerability. And for you to be a likable person, she talked to us about our failures and our success. And the bottom line of it was know yourself, wait before talking, mentor others, and embrace some conflicts. So I hope we have some lessons there to learn. Those of us who read through walls, you are told to break the walls, and you get closer to people so that they can actually be able to bring in issues that come up to you. From there, she challenged us on the visions that we have on our companies and the issues that we need to run from there. If your vision is ABCD, run how to evolve a vision that impacts on customer, environment, and the policy holders, and that people will like you. From there, we moved to the technology paper. On the technology paper, this was a very interactive lesson, and I will just go to summary because we started with Vincent Omwenga, and Vincent broke down to us the blockchain, which to us, we thought it's that IT language, but he told us in a nutshell that blockchain is all about systems, that it can be used in the insurance fraternity, and he challenged us that we need not to be buying our product, our IT solutions from the shelf. We need to involve the university, tell them what your problem is as an organization, and they will come up with a solution for you. So from here, I know we are going to partner up with some people. We went on to John Kamau. John Kamau challenged us as an industry, and we had a lot of take-homes from him. And I will end with this conclusion, which he asked us, why do we punish those who make money for us and reward those who cost us money? He challenged us about our traditional way of doing things, how our policies are still the same way they were many years ago. And our take-home, and I believe that's what is for all of us, is to go back and become innovative on monthly policies. We can have motor policies that are monthly, home insurance that are monthly. And the question we pose to us, if right policies are paid on check off at the end of the month, why not? The motor insurance and the other. And I know from here, we have organizations that are going to speak to their management and we resolve around those issues. From there, we moved to ESRI. ESRI challenged us on the science of where, and they asked us we need to ask ourselves where our claims coming from. Why are we doing these things the same way we have done them different than we have always done them? And they challenged us to spatial thinking on how do we do things, on what time and at what space. So from there, we will run our lessons, and I'm sure each one of you has notes, and we will pick many lessons. From there, we ended up with the human resource paper with Janet, who took us to the human resource through an IT angle. And she told us that as customers evolve, so should our resources evolve. And she challenged us that if you don't take care of your staff, if you don't take care of the organizations that we reach, we don't expect any profitability or sustainability. And she told us the skills that we have for the future of the human resource is the AI-enabled skills. We need to align our skills development with the work of the future, and we need to have analytical skills. So for us as people who are congregating here in this conference, we have been taught We have been advised, lessons have been given to us, solutions have been given to us. So it is up to us as we leave this conference. What do we implement? What do we stop doing? And how do we move forward? So with those few remarks, I hope I have refreshed what we went through yesterday, and I've brought to speed our speakers for today who are not with us yesterday. And I want to welcome everybody to day 2 of our conference today. Let's be attentive and let's speak our lessons. Have present listening. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Madam Deputy Director. Thank you so very much. We appreciate your recap indeed. One of the hardest things from my community is being told to summarize things. Ukiambia mkisia apige summary, area wachane nayo. So indeed, that is a special gift, the ability to summarize the whole day within 20 minutes. Exceptional. Thank you so much. Now, we head straight into our data protection paper. We are looking at a panel paper that is control and security of insurance data to enhance regulatory compliance, then the industry statistics and data control. This paper will be having 2 speakers, one being Ms. Immaculate Kasait, the Commissioner Data Protection Commission, and then we'll have Ms. Mary Koibo, the IRA representative. The paper was supposed to be chaired by Mr. William Masita, who requested to be away, and instead he nominated a very able individual that I got to meet on the previous session. Indeed, good to see you again, Moses. Moses Kiton is an experienced industry professional who holds a master's degree in actuarial management from City University of London and a bachelor's degree in actuarial science from the greatest university south of Sahara, north of Limpopo, east of the Greenwich Meridian, and west of New Zealand. That is the only university with a road in capital city, the University Way, and of course, I'm talking about the Great University of Nairobi. Also, he's an associate of the Actuarial Society of Kenya and the Life Management Institute. Moses has over 10 years experience in the insurance industry, gained while working for the Insurance Regulatory Authority, and is also a past international fellow of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, USA. He is currently a Deputy Director, Insurance Services at the Policyholders Compensation Fund. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now a pleasure and privilege to welcome before you our paper chair, Bwana Moses Kiton. Put your hands together as we welcome.
Thank you very much, Bwana MC. The Director, Insurance Institute of Kenya, Madam Agnes Mashavia. The IRA Director, Mr. Njenga Mwangi. The Data Commissioner, Madam Immaculate Kasait. Chief Executive Officers of insurance companies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning again. Good morning. It's good to be here on behalf of the Chief Executive Officer of the Policyholders Compensation Fund, who unfortunately could not be here, but would have wanted to be here to chair this session on data protection. I must say, I think for most of us, we may not, at least some of us may not be familiar with the Policyholders Compensation Fund, which is a fund that is established under the Insurance Act to provide compensation to policyholders of companies that have been closed by the regulator. So currently the fund sits at around 16 billion shillings, and we're actually providing compensation to companies that were closed by the IRA. I think notably Resolution Insurance, which went under this year. So that is as far as the mandate of PCF is concerned. But today we are here to listen to data protection, and we have 2 presentations to be made by distinguished panelists, both of whom are regulators. So we have the Data Commissioner herself, who is here, and we also have Madam Mary Koibo. The first presentation will be on control and security of insurance data to enhance regulatory compliance, and this will be delivered by Immaculate Kasait. The second presentation is on industry statistics and data control. So I will proceed just to read out the profile of the first presenter, that is Madam Immaculate Kasait. So Madam Immaculate Kasait is Kenya's first data commissioner. She brings to this important role nearly 15 years of executive and senior management experience in the public sector. A sound, complex, and market-relevant record focuses on matters of training, compliance, planning, monitoring, and evaluation. She has extensive experience in elections governance and women's rights, and has played a key role in the establishment of several projects in Kenya and abroad. Madam Kasait was instrumental in the setting up of the first domestic observation program for the Commonwealth Secretariat while working at the Institute for Education in Democracy, that is IED, and is among the two building resources in democracy, governance, and elections accrediting experts in Kenya. Madam Kasait was the chairperson of the task force on development of the 3 sets of data protection regulations in 2021 that are now in force. Prior to her appointment as a data commissioner, she worked at the IEBC, where she served as the first female in charge of voter registration, elections, and operations from 2010 to 2020, where she steered the setting up and operationalization of electoral processes at the commission. Madam Kasait is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and holds a bachelor's degree from Makerere University, a postgraduate diploma from the Kenya School of Law, an executive global master in business administration from the United States International University, Africa. In 2021, she was recognized amongst the top 25 women in digital in Kenya. And she was awarded the Presidential Award, Moran of the Burning Spear MBS, for her outstanding work in public service, and she continues to take part in several philanthropy activities as part of her community work. So join me in welcoming Madam Commissioner, who is here with us, and him personally, by a round of applause.
Thank you, Moses. Me, I don't have the CV of University of Nairobi. I hope I still fall within the cut. I'll start by appreciating Madam Agnes Macharia, who is the director IIK. We had quite a bit of chat before I got here. And Mr. Mwandi Njenga, the IRA director. And of course, all the participants in the room, in your different portfolios. I'm sure you'll hear from different insurance agencies. Good morning. Good morning. You know, when I was growing up, you hear insurance discussion. And then you see an insurance, they call you today and then tomorrow. Let me ask you, by the way, do they teach you how to market in school? Because I think everyone in the insurance, the third statement of the conversation is what policy they are selling. And it's a strength. I'm not saying it, I'm saying it is a strength because it means that then that's how you're able to move your numbers. It's a skill they teach you in school. Or they don't. Huh? It's inborn. There's nothing inborn. In the traditional African setting, unless you are your parents sold a kiosk somewhere and then they steal that skill. Is that the case? No, but it's a real strength. I'm happy to be here and I'm really happy that you went through a recap. As you heard from me, I'm a trainer by profession. So you'll allow me to walk here. Is that allowed, Madam Macharia? Yes. I prefer that than standing here on the podium. By the time you're done with this conversation, nobody will remember what you said. So today, before, I don't know who will explain the presentation. Okay, before I will call you, please do not refuse to answer my question. Now that you're serious marketers, every insurance I know profession is a marketer. Which data are you currently holding? Imagine I've started with you and I know which data are you currently collecting from your customers?
The usual KYC data.
biodata, the name.
Give me one. I want to make sure when the time I get the everyone has given you one data that data set they are collecting. Your
Name.
name. Okay. Name. You, which one do you collect? Your name, please. Yes. National ID. I can't see the name. Let me see the name. Which one do you collect? No, personal information, KY. It's called KYC. Or you work for the regulator. But even as you work for the regulator, what information do you collect from your regulator, which is personal? They don't ask names for their directors? Name, just name first. Okay, all right. Regulator amesema hataki budget bond. Like KYC, yeah, hiyo si shida. I'm going to come here. Tim, regulator. Wacha basi nirudi. Regulator tu kama mimi.
Regulator, we ask, we want to know the people who are being employed in the companies.
Yes.
And the directors to ascertain their suitability to hold those positions.
Okay.
Yeah, so we know, we would like to know their names, their professional qualifications, even the citizenship.
The citizenship. Yes. But even as a regulator, you don't have employees. How many do you have? How many employees do you have?
70.
So have you registered as a data controller? You have. There's no exemption. Just some sheria. No, not wait for any sheria. Hakuna exemption ni sheria. Kumbe watu wa serikali wanasema kuna exemption. There is none. And senior. Good. Hata umesikia I'm very happy governance anasema nini pale. Mr. Mongi amesema you should be having a data protection officers. I'm just trying to break the ice. We can go to the next slide. So that, we've just finished a training with what we call University of Maastricht and GIZ in Germany, the German embassy. And before I even go to my presentation, the conversation around data protection has to be real. It has to be real. And I'll try, by the end of this conversation, to try and infuse some of your practices in terms of information you collect, what it means for you as a person. Because unless you understand what it means for you as a person, then you look at it as a conversation out there for other people and not us. When you don't embrace it as a conversation as yourself, what it means, when it hits you from a penalty perspective and a reputation, it shocks you. It's one of the things that the world is being asked to rethink. When the representative from the EU and the representative from Germany were making their presentation, they said the reason European countries and especially Germany is very cautious about data protection, it's about, if you remember what happened in that country 60 years ago, that you are profiled because whether you are Jew or not. And then after that, they decided what to do with you. And that is personal information. It's about profiling. It happens to us all the time without us realizing. So I hope I can leave that part for you to consider. But before we come there, let's go to what will earn me a seat on the table in government on why data protection. I'll talk about Vision 2030, the economic blueprint, global trends, the legal framework in Kenya, the mandate of the office, the principle, the rights of the data subject, the obligation, lawful processing, and basically the way forward. How much time, Moses, do I have?
20 minutes.
Let me stand here now. I've stopped my story mingi. From a framework perspective, it's always good to envisage what Vision 20 says means for us, because that's where we draw our policies as government. whether it's an economic pillar, social, or political pillar. And basically, when you look at the Vision 2030, we are looking at a vibrant ICT sector. And I'm happy as the recap was going on, I know one of the things that was talked about is technology and blockchain, sorry, that you talked about yesterday. So from ICT perspective now, you begin to ask yourself, how do we position this country from a social, and issues around insurance are really social, isn't it? Social and economic. Yeah, they are social and the issue around economic, because you're taking care of our social being and our economic welfare so that I don't suffer losses. You're able to take me back to where I was supposed to be. Going back to, so what legal framework for inform that you can always go back and refer to what legal framework and policy inform issues around data protection. The national ICT policy, the Kenya Digital Economic Blueprint for Africa, the draft digital economic strategy for Kenya, the privacy and data protection policy, and the Kenya National Digital Master Plan. I would add, because as an industry, this is your annual meeting, please look at these documents so that you're not, there are very many insurance opportunities here. I don't know how many of you are actually insuring fiber. I don't know, I'm just asking. Yet every day we have fiber cuts. And fiber is what defines what digital economy is. There's a lot that you can pick from here. I would urge you, because this is also a place to exchange knowledge, look at these documents. They will inform your policy and areas that you can actually look at as what in business we call the blue ocean. What are the global trends? Next slide. Like I said, issues around, the most fundamental issue around data protection is the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, Convention 108, which was passed in January of 1981. Everyone talks about GDPR. For those of you who have global branches, or you know, that is a conversation in Europe, and a more significant one, if you are ever to violate data protection in Europe, what it will mean for your institution. In Africa, of course, we have 33 countries out of 54, which have data protection laws. And of course, we have the African Union Convention on Cyber Security. I don't know whether you're having conversation about cyber security as an industry. I don't know, because that is one of the highest risk currently. Risk of people being carjacked and money being taken away, we used to see in the 90s, is not neither here nor there anymore. That doesn't happen. But cyber security becomes key. So in your conversation, please think through, because that's an important area. So from us, on the legal perspective also, what informs our work is, of course, the Data Protection Act, the right to privacy. And if I had time, I'll take you through a conversation, and I like to ask. When you ask an individual randomly and then you tell them, imagine I start asking you questions like, where does your child go to school? Moses, how would that make you feel? You're wondering, and then they ask, how many wives do you have? He's even shaking and laughing. It makes you very uncomfortable, yeah? Because it's supposed to be your private information. Why is this data commissioner interested in how many wives or others I have, how many children I have, where do they go to school? Well, but remember, that is what the Constitution is. That's why we are here. We're supposed to protect people's privacy. Because information about you, if you look at Article 35, is misleading information also about you is allowed to be deleted. So that data protection is here to protect you as an individual first. Before you even come to your outer space. Please go to the next slide on the mandate of the institution. Next. Moses, I'm really going to run through. So when we go to the office, our role as an office is to regulate processing of personal data. So all that information you're collecting, which I will come to in the next slide, as in 2 slides from now, we're supposed to regulate it as a regulator. We are supposed to ensure that as you collect that information, as you process it, it takes into account what we call the principles under Section 25, which I'll also, I hope I have time to touch on. Protect the privacy of individuals. of course, establish the legal and institutional mechanism to protect the institution and of course, the rights of a data subject. The functions of the office, I don't need to go into that, those are there. Mentioned earlier about the regulations, we have the data protection general regulations. I urge that you familiarize yourself with it. They are available on our website. The complaints handling, we've had, we are yet to classify the complaints we are getting, but we've had one or two from insurance. Actually, on complaints, we have a handling mechanism of how we deal with it. And then there's a registration. Every institution is supposed to register as a data controller or data processor. For a specific reason, it helps you to begin reflecting on how you as an institution are collecting personal data. What information do insurance companies collect? Next slide, please. So, and I might be wrong. Some of the things that you collect from your clients is identifiable information. You ask people about their names, their telephone number, postal address, their PIN, their age. Biological information, date of birth, their gender, their spouse, their citizenship. Financial information attempts. Do you ask for bank statements? You do. Why do you need bank statement to see my credit rating? Your health, this one you ask a lot, isn't it? Blood type, I mean, disability, pregnancy, surgery, property. What is this personal information? Is it? So what do you do with it after you have collected? You store it somewhere, you secure it with a password, who accesses it? So any information that can actually identify an individual, whether a natural individual, actually, that is what we call personal information. And that is what this office seeks to secure. Sensitive information, now you go further when you start asking people about their race, their health status, their ethnic, social origin, their conscious. How many remember the story about Cambridge Analytica? Where was it an issue? Mr. Mwangi, where was it an issue?
It's profile.
Profiles.
And to use the personal data of people to it swayed people's political leaning because of the data they had collected.
And how did they know their leaning? How did they know their leaning? That's what I'm asking. It's information you had shared private.
Yes.
With Facebook or a social media.
True.
Probably they asked you which political party do you prefer.
True.
And then you ticked, you said, then it was Jubilee or it was what? It was Jubilee or it was TNA?
It was TNA.
TNA.
Yeah.
And then you ticked. Then after that, what happens? They then would send you messages to make these ones look bad and look these ones look. And they would only send you specific messages. What were they using? But what IT technology were they using? Algorithms, isn't it? Was it affecting your consciousness? Isn't it? That is how personal information can be used to manipulate a process. And for you as insurance, is it possible if you had access to all our information, you decide whether to give me premium or not, or whether it's higher or not? You normally do a health risk, this immaculate. We are in the hospital sana, sindio? But I don't know, I don't want to ask, I don't want to go into details of who is my mother's insurance, because every year we keep increasing the premium. I won't ask. But doesn't that make you feel that way? Imagine, think about yourself. If your child was going to a school, I'll give an example that was given yesterday about counselor in a school. This counselor in a school was collecting information about our children. It's in Europe, not here. And then after they had collected all the information, their laptop was stolen. And it had everything about their children. everything. But the laptop was stolen. Where did that information end up? Huh? A malicious hand. But the malicious hand is called what in IT? Yes, but what is that place called? Where hackers reside. You know, there's a place hackers reside. What is it called? Who knows? Cyberspace. There's another world. It's called the dark web. So you know what they did? This is your innocent child. They didn't even know that their counselor, the information was stolen. They took that information, they took it to the dark web. They started trolling these children online. So one day, your child is stressed, you're wondering what happened. Kumbe, it is their counselor whose laptop was stolen and the information was taken to the dark web and the children are being harassed. That is what access to personal information can do to us personally. Forget your kind of the work you're doing. So that's why you're told we have to be careful. And as we sit here and we say the topic of today being control and security of insurance, you ask yourself, what information are we collecting? Is it necessary? So that your takeaway should be, as you begin to think about your own audits in your institutions, you don't need to collect every single detail because you could lose it. It could end up in a dark web. And when it ends up there, what happens to your customer? Okay, what happens to your customer? And then your customer will be suffering from the exposure that somebody innocently in the office was carrying a laptop and somebody accessed all their information. That is discrimination, could be another one. That people could use this information to discriminate against others. The other one could be identity theft. That somebody could steal your identity, and now I haven't seen many people saying, that's not my Twitter account. Social media, isn't that stealing people's identity? Yes. Oh, you have an online audience. Do we pause for now?
Yes, I think you
Okay.
can pause for
Okay. You okay?
Yeah.
Excuse me,
Yes.
as we pause, something keeps troubling me.
Yeah.
I work with the Insurance Regulatory Authority. And we register insurance agents
Yes.
using their identity numbers.
Mhm.
So that is the basis upon which somebody can identify whether those people are registered with us or not. If a prospect, that's somebody wants to buy insurance, they would like to know the registration status of the person from whom they are buying insurance. And in that regard, we always tell them, ask the person who is selling to you to give you their identity number. And this identity number, you call us as the regulator and ask us if this person is registered. Then we will tell you the person is registered or the person is not registered. Is that correct?
I think that shouldn't be. It's like Law Society, because I'm a member of Law Society. On the Law Society website, if you want to know whether I have a current practicing certificate, you can check. I'm sure you have a legal basis for that kind of sharing of information. But because you're doing it to help propel your work, I don't think that would be a problem, because it's for that purpose. It becomes an issue if it is used beyond the purpose of identifying that person and validating the actually registered regulator. Okay. All right. So going back, I was you will see, because of please move on to the next slide. That is the concern that you need from my basis of definition of what personal data is, please reflect on you as a company and as an institution on what type of personal information you collect and whether it is necessary. Because the more you collect, the more you expose your customers and the more you expose the institution in the unlikely event that that information ended in the wrong hands. So that is the reason why we propose, you will see in the next slide on principles, data minimization as a principle. The next slide. That you only collect information that you need. If you don't need certain information, you don't need. So as part of your control and security as insurance providers and regulators, please look at these principles in depth. We'd have an opportunity to go through each one of them, but because of time, we don't. But just reflect. Lawfulness. Do you collect the information because you're required to do so by the law? That's what gives you the lawfulness. Purpose limitation. You collect that information only for insurance. So that if you begin to collect that information and you want to market, that becomes another reason. So you have to make sure at the point of collecting information, you tell your customer, this information we are collecting, we can also use it for marketing. Do you consent? Accurate data minimization I've talked about, accurate and accountability. It has to be accurate. It's always perhaps, it may look easy, but for insurance, accuracy is everything, isn't it? My health status could be captured wrongly or my age, and it could affect what premium I get. So accuracy becomes an issue. Accountability is an issue that we encourage from the very top in terms of the board. Storage limitation. How long, by the way, how long are you supposed to store the information as insurance company? 7 years. 7 years. So if you don't need the information anymore, you should not stop storing. What the Data Protection Act says in principle, you do not keep my information in perpetuity. You need to get rid of it, and the getting rid of it becomes another conversation. We have not reached there as Kenya, but it's another conversation. How do you dispose it? Because in the UK, the Data Protection Authority had to deal with an issue of somebody who took a hospital that collected information and left personal information in their balcony. And somebody accessed it. They were, see, we used to do that. Gazette is in a printiwa at a result, at a payslip. When people used to pay, I wasn't there. I hear a long time ago in civil service. There are these many payslips that used to be generated at DPM, and then they are sent across the country. I would imagine other institutions would do the same, and then behind that, for the ones that are waste, zinapeanwa. So that is personal information. So you have to be careful in terms of how you dispose at the point of storage. Integrity and confidentiality, from an ICT perspective, integrity and confidentiality is we collect information because you trust us. Only those who have authority can access it and will avail it when it's possible. That is what integrity and confidentiality means. You can skip that slide. So what are the rights of the data subject? Those are the lawful basis. We have an opportunity. I'll share with you this slide with your piece. You can always go through the data. Rights of a data subject. So in the event that one of your data subject feels that you violated their rights, they have a right to access personal information. Do you allow your customers to access their personal information? Do we? I don't hear allowed yes. It means we leave it. No, they do. And we are seeing those complaints coming to us. That I ask for certain information, somebody is holding it on my behalf and they are not sharing it. And your customer can also say, I'm restricting the processing. They can also object to the processing. They can request you to rectify. They can ask you, and this is controversial, but please remember it's a right. Let me ask Mr. Mwani, if you're working for an insurance company A, and I come to you and I'm your customer, and I know Mr. Meskin has another company, and I want to move there, and I tell you, please give me the information. Will you give me? Data portability is a reality. I can move with my information from one insurance company to another. I know mmenyamaza because you have done it clear, lakini that is the truth. Iko hapa. The two Kenyans become empowered more. Aya, just prepare me. See, I had the question on the floor was, our work is to deal with risks. Kama hiyo ni risk or business model yako, please start thinking how you mitigate it. Because it's a reality. Data portability, it means I should be able to access my information from one place to another. You can charge me, but reasonably so. Then right of erasure is not an absolute right, but it's also there. And I'm not even started. Wow. Okay. I have to respect time for sure. Duty to notify, it's there. You have to notify your customers about their rights, the personal information you're collecting, whether you're sharing it with a third party, or so on and so forth. That is a duty to notify. So a good one also I'd like to mention in passing is the data protection by design or by default. And data protection by design or by default becomes an issue of control and security of insurance data companies, because then you begin to do reverse engineering. What the Data Protection Act is asking us to do is to do reverse engineering, where we ask ourselves, so now we've been collecting, our business is insurance, we've been collecting personal information. How then do we ensure at conceptualization? Have we done a data protection impact assessment? Where are we collecting this information? Where are we storing it? How are we disposing it? So you have to think through. That is what we call data protection by design by default. So that data protection does not become an afterthought. It becomes a talk that we talk about. The way we have all embraced risk assessments or audits or cyber security, we have been it's been required of us to do the same of data protection. So next slide, data protection, when it comes to that, we have to look through what we are calling data protection principles, enforceability mechanism for the subjects of the data subject, the risk management mechanism, the cyber security measures, access security, physical security, identifiable measures. What the data controller and data processor is also supposed to look at is how then to also protect personal information in the cycle of data. Next, cross data transfer. I don't think I want to go into that because we may not, but this is important if you're moving information from one country to the other. These are things that you need to consider, appropriate safeguards, adequate decision making by the commissioner with consent of the data subjects. Next slide. Data localization, it may not apply to insurance companies, but data localization basically means is a certain category of information that must be stored here, or if you're not storing here, you must keep a copy here. The reason around data localization, it is an issue about sovereignty of the state. And this many times it's met with a lot of rebuff from multinationals. However, what we want to ask you, imagine in the case where M-Pesa, if our M-Pesa servers were in Ireland, and then we went into a conflict with Ireland, and the sea cable, ikakatwa katikati between here and Dubai, what happens to us? See, we are grounded. And you had this conversation, thank God, you know, during election, they kept looking with one, I hope in the data protection is not out of the issue. You remember the concerns around servers in 2017. Was it a concern this time around? No. The issue around data localization, the globally people have realized the war today is not about boundaries. It's fought in the cyberspace. If the war is fought in the cyberspace, and you've seen Russia, Ukraine, you've seen America, what really happened around issues around cyberspace, you've seen China. If the war is around cyberspace, and you have no control over your critical infrastructure, you can actually ground a country. So that's the rationale around data localization. That if there is critical infrastructure about health, about elections, about financial institutions, don't ground this country. Have a copy here so that we never come to that as a country. And then there is third-party service providers as data processors. I know you get into this a lot yourselves. So when you say about that services providers as data processors, you as an insurance might be the data controller because you're the one who collects information, but you might be providing a service or a hospital, or you might be it depends really. So once you embark on those kind of arrangement, please remember to put this into account. The duration, the subject matter duration, nature of the processing, the type of personal data that is being collected, the categories, the obligation, the limitation, and details of the details and security provisions. So then data protection impact assessment. It's required of you if you're changing your business and you're involved in high risk. It's important to do a data protection impact assessment, which is really a risk. For instance, the case I was giving earlier of that school where a counselor lost their laptop. If only the school had done a data protection impact assessment, they would have foreseen this as a risk, and they would have put together mitigating measures. That is what is being called upon you in the Data Protection Act. Always do a data protection impact assessment because it helps you mitigate your risks so that you don't feel exposed and are able to protect your clients. What are the consequences? Of course, as a regulator, I must talk about consequences of non-compliance. One, failure to comply with the data protection. We have the power to issue an enforcement notice. We give you 30 days to comply, failure of which we issue a penalty notice. The penalty notice imposes a fine of not more than 10,000 for every penalty until breach is rectified. 10,000 each. So if you have five breaches, how much is that? And if we implement it after a year, hey, I can see I'm getting AIE. Anyway, so, but more importantly, because I've had some companies, ile kipuri yetu tu ya Wakenya, wanauliza, hiyo ni pesa ngapi? Milioni 5, I can sort. But let me tell you, most importantly is the brand reputation. Once it's gone, and you remember, you don't want to be an SME forever. We are growing, isn't it? And because our space is so small, we want to expand globally, regionally as insurance providers, isn't it? I know some of you have moved to that you're creating more, more resources for back home. But who is going to transact with you with this kind of reputation? And you've heard how Europe, you know, in Germany and most of those European countries, they don't have money, what they call what? M-Pesa wallet, I mean, or whatever name you want for digital wallet. You know, they don't have, they are very cautious about their personal information being out there, isn't it? You think they'll take it lightly? No. So it's important that, and I tell people, please remember it's your customers will come and complain to us. Even if you don't tell us you had a data breach, I can guarantee they will come and tell us on this date, insurance company A, their employee A called me and I had never given them that information. It is them who will tell us, not you. So when it happens, please let us know so that it doesn't catch us off guard also. And you also begin to prepare. We might have mercy when it comes to the penalty when you have told us in advance. Final slide. No, by the way, on a serious note, it's one of the considerations. Did this person report a data breach? Moses, hold your peace. I have run it through and I'm coming to an end. These are the way forward. It's important to conduct your audits, put in place safeguards, and have accountability. And I'm happy Mr. Wang who sits on the board is here. Please encourage more board members to sit down and CEOs to actually have a conversation around the need to have data protection as a standing agenda. Because until that happens, we're still walking in the dark. And the thing about data breaches, we do not know when it will happen. No one is safe. No one is safe on data breach because our biggest liability or risk is human beings. And human risks have very interesting behavior. You might have, and we are in a generation Z, I hope none is here. What excites me is different. They walk around in their laptops, and because we find them very efficient, we give them our work. Atembea tu kwa mtaa, your laptop iende ndio utajua ujui. I have come to the end. Thank you very much for your attention. I have to run through very fast. However, I'm sure we'll have other opportunities to interact. And thank you, Moses. Okay, thank you, and have a lovely interaction.
Wow, I think that was quite insightful to hear from the data commissioner herself. It was quite engaging. I know many of you restrained yourselves from asking questions, and I'll ask that you just write them down so that we have the next presenter. But maybe just to summarize, I think all of us now know very well that we need to register with the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. And of course, we need to understand our responsibilities. And we need to ask ourselves whether or not we should hold the data that we do hold as insurers. And of course, we need to comply with the various statutes. And just to mention that I think last week we saw the notice that was issued for, I think, quite a number of digital lenders. And I'm sure many of us here are wondering, what do we need to do so that we don't get a notice like the one we saw on press? And I think we have been empowered, so thank you very much, Madam Data Commissioner. So at this juncture, I will just invite the next presenter, who is giving a presentation on industry statistics and data control. That is Madam Mary Koimu, who is a Senior Manager, Prudential Supervision of Insurance Regulatory Authority. So let me just read out her profile as she prepares. Mary Koimu is God-fearing, honest and passionate public officer with over 20 years experience in the supervision of the insurance industry. As a member of the Insurance Institute of Kenya, she's committed to the highest level of ethical standards and professionalism. Mary Koimu holds a Master of Commerce from Strathmore University and an advanced diploma in insurance from the Chartered Insurance Institute, London. Her areas of expertise include prudential supervision, AML CFT supervision, conduct supervision, risk-based supervision, risk manager, regulatory and statutory accounting, and policy development. So join me in welcoming Mary with a round of applause as she comes on stage. Thank you, Mary.
Acha nisaidiwe na hii technology. Director IIK, Director IRA, Commissioner Data Protection, CEOs of insurance companies and insurance brokers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Let me join my fellow speakers in congratulating IIK for organizing this conference, putting together topics that resonate with what is trending in the industry, and bringing together powerful speakers who tell us the truth. Yesterday, Kamau hit on the brokers, but as the good Bible says, the truth will set us free. Yesterday, we talked about technology and human resources, and we said this is what helps us in our work. But in the insurance industry, data is the oil. And let me pick up from where the commissioner left. As you sit in your desk as a marketer, Do you ask yourself, the data that I'm getting, how does it affect the end result? How does it affect the reports that are generated and shared with various stakeholders? IRA being one of them. So my topic is about the industry statistics and data control. This is what I have. The elephant in the industry, IFRS 17. Rather than going backwards, I decided let me be futuristic. Compliance is here with us. And where I sit, I'm crossing my fingers that it is not postponed again, that we comply with it. And it's for good reasons. As the Bible again says, I'm a Christian, a believer. And as the Bible says, if this standard is what will save our industry, let it be. It's for the welfare of this industry. When I heard about IFRS 17 in 2018 for the first time, one word caught my attention: onerous. I'm not an accountant, and I had to inquire, what is this onerous and what do you mean? In simple terms, I was told, at inception, you must identify which contracts are profitable and which contracts are not profitable. A CEO word his name. If he knows that this contract is not profitable, would you accept it in your books? Right at the beginning, would you bring on board a contract that is not profitable? So for me, that's what caught my attention, and I was very excited with the IFRS 17, but it kept on being postponed, but now it will have to be implemented. In this era of changes, data is the key driver that drives organizations. For us as an industry, we are very much aware. For us to make a decision, we need data. For us to determine whether to accept the risk or not, we need data. Somebody yesterday said, we are no longer underwriting. For my motor vehicle, what my insurer is only interested is the value of the car. And they always threaten me. If you don't value this vehicle after 30 days, we downgrade the cover to that particular. But basically, data is the oil for the insurance industry. Every step that we take, even when we are developing products, we require data. I use my English back those days when I was still in school, that money is to banks as data is to insurers. It's the lifeblood of our industry. We've been processing personal data in our industry. And as the commissioner had highlighted some of the data that we collect. Yesterday, we had a session on technology. And with the technology, we now collect large amounts of data and from various sources. We now have information about our clients at our fingertips. We've talked about protection. I'm not going to talk about that. What comes to your mind when you hear about IFRS 17? Are you excited like me? Are you flabbergasted and anguished? Or do you want to hide your head in the sand looking for the data? Where I sit, I'm so excited. And I'm longing for it to be implemented. Implementation, that's the implementation date. And it's going to change the reporting requirements. I'm not an accountant, as you've heard, I'm a public officer, a career regulator in the insurance industry. But one advantage of being a regulator is you become a jack of all trades. I'm an accountant, though I'm not a CPAK. I'm a lawyer, though I don't belong to the, I never went to any school. IT, insurance, actuarial. So some of these things I know. And IFRS 17 provides a different approach for measuring and reporting insurance contracts. It requires granular data and assumptions and models which must be supported by current inputs. And the contracts are measured at current fulfillment value. IFRS 17 provides a uniform measurement and a presentation approach to all insurance contracts globally. And it applies to insurance and reinsurance contracts that are issued, reinsurance contracts that are held, and investment contracts with discretionary participation features which the entity provides to issue insurance contracts. It's important to note that the requirements of IFRS 17 are broad, and they are going to have an impact on all aspects of the company. There is therefore need for integrated expertise. As underwriters, you may be wondering, what role do I play? As marketers, you may be wondering, what role do I play? This is an accounting standards. It affects the finance people. I don't need to be worried about it. Our actuaries sit at their corner with their Excel spreadsheets, doing their modeling and their assumption. You may be asking, how does it affect my work? I'll show you shortly how it affects our work. And it's important to know that IFRS 17 relies on actuarial calculations. When I was very active in on-site inspections, and if some of you had an interaction with me, I always ask the question, which I never got an answer. Between the auditor and the actuary, who gets figures from the other? The actuary will take me round and round in the actuarial jargon. The finance manager or the auditor will take me round and round in their jargon, and by the end of the day, I never got an answer. Another reason I'm excited about IFRS 17, the actuaries and the finance people now have to work together. So that when I ask, where did these figures come from? They've worked together and they've come up with those figures. What are some of the benefits of IFRS 17? Transparency. There'll be extensive disclosures on the risk associated with the contracts that we issue. Relevance, where the measurements of insurance contracts are based on current values and they are updated regularly. Already you can see the amount of data that we require. Not just data, but the quality of that data. Agility. I've talked about actuarial and finance working together. They bring on board the other functions of the company. It's going to transform how we do our business. And this requires investment in technology, new expertise, and training. For me, this will offer greater protection for policyholders. This is because it's going to strengthen the company's balance sheet. For the investors outside there, it will enhance their confidence. Of all accounts, insurance accounts is a bit complicated, and most investors may not understand. But with this standard, and with the disclosures that are going to be made, it will be easy for the investors to understand and even compare and be able to make a decision whether to invest in a company or not. Let me make this statement that there will be no IFRS 17 reporting without sorting your data first. It has been said, this standard is data hungry. It demands new data requirements, new calculations, more granular and more detailed discussions. Where I sit as a regulator and with my colleagues at IRA, at times we look at the information that you provide and we ask ourselves, is this information correct? I remember an instance where we received returns, and having worked with the regulator and supervised all these entities, I know the companies inside out. So even when they submit returns, I can tell you whether this information is correct or not correct. So one company, they submitted the returns. Our officers in the data analytics, they generated the reports and they shared the reports with the supervision team. We went through the report, and for this company, something caught our attention. Something is not right here. My colleague took the initiative, called the principal officer of the company and asked, did you submit this information? Yes, I did. And normally, you know, there is that declaration as the principal officer where you sign. The principal officer was very confident. Yes, I did. Is it correct? Yes, it is. My colleague called the PO come to my office, we discussed. So he was shown what was generated and the source of that information. He said, no, this cannot be correct. And he signed the declaration as the principal officer. So some of the information that you provide, even to us, we question the integrity. But with IFRS 17, you have no option. If the data must be accurate. It must be up to date. And you'll be required to collect more granular data to be able to comply with this standard. So it's high time, wherever you sit, as a marketer, the data that you collect, know that that data will have an impact with the financial statements of the company. As an underwriter, as you are capturing data, at the back of your mind, be conscious that it will affect the financial reports. The claims analyst, the reinsurance, as you prepare your boundaries, know that it will have an impact on the financial statements and the reporting of this company. And these reports will be used internally within the company to make decisions. It will be used externally by your shareholders, potential investors, and the regulators. And we use that information to make a decision about a company. It's not just that we are asking this information for nothing. And we will be required to compile and generate data. I mean the reports from historic, current, and forward-looking perspective. It's important to note that generating reports under IFRS 17 is not a linear process, but rather non-linear. And it will keep on incorporating new information as it becomes available and from various sources. It's complicated. And as I've alluded throughout, you must think this data that we are collecting, it will have an impact in the final result. So we need right from the source. We should be aware and know that this data is going to impact on our compliance with IFRS 17. Already, as you can see, it's not an easy task. And it presents a data management challenge across the entire life cycle of data. So what are the requirements? I've already talked about the data that is required. And just to reiterate, IFRS 17 requires high quality data, which is accurate and can be audited. This really calls for integration and automation and must be supported by a strong, scalable, and flexible IT platform. When I was involved actively in on-site inspections, and I would visit offices of the insurance companies, some companies were still using Excel spreadsheets. I remember in 2012, when we started risk-based supervision, it almost became a crisis. When one member of the team wanted to press delete for some of the information in the company, and the officer in the company did not take it lightly. Because That's a clear sign that there was no backup for that information. So what are the data requirements for IFRS 17? As I've said, it uses a current measurement model. And for this to be done, it requires gradually data-informed building blocks. And those are some of the building blocks. And the one which will really cut across the entire company is computation of the contractual service margin. And as you can see, it requires all that information, right from underwriting, claims, marketing, the insurance, and investment. During transition, you'll be required to restate your accounts and apply the standard retrospective. Do we have that data? In the format, in the manner that is required to comply with the standard? How many companies? I was involved in another exercise some few weeks ago, and some of these entities are international in nature. They are not within Kenya. And they've already done a comparison and retrospective. They have the returns already. Yeah, they've done the retrospective. How many of our companies have done such? How many companies? More detailed disclosure and reporting. Increased use of market data. I've said that you'll keep on incorporating the information as they become available, and we'll get this information from various sources. So our companies will be required to obtain, store, and track data on interest rates and in huge volumes. Segmentations of portfolios in annual profitability groups. At inception, we're supposed to determine whether this is an onerous insurance contract. At times, I feel for the shareholders of insurance companies, because the management, the marketers are interested in the top line only. As it has been said from yesterday, we no longer do underwriting. For motor vehicle, we are only interested in one element, the value of the vehicle. You don't care who's driving this vehicle, the experience of this driver, the model of the vehicle, the spare parts, and all that. And that's why motor private insurance could be a loss-making class. Risk-based capital came in, and we applied capital charges. Outstanding premiums bring in capital. If the capital of the company has been impaired by losses, bring in capital. And we ask the shareholders to put in the capital. As a shareholder, if you've been told that these insurance contracts are loss-making from the word go, would you accept to have these contracts in your books? As management, who are mandated to run these companies, I think we need to be serious, so that we can give value to our shareholders. The regulator is asking for capital, but as management, are we taking it seriously? More data integration and automation are talked about that. So what are some of the challenges? We've segmented how we collect data. We have the call centers, we have the forms which customers fill when they are taking cover. All this is good for the customers. And unfortunately, the sections guard this data very jealously. The marketers don't want to share the data with the underwriters, with the claims people, and all the others. But under IFRS 17, all this data must be connected to ensure compliance. We even have inconsistencies
in defining key terms. The other day I was saying that it's only in the insurance to using different names depending on the stage of the transaction. To the marketers, I'm a potential client. Once I come on board, I become a policy holder. Should the insured event arise, I become a claimant. And as director yesterday said, we look for a flimsy reason not to pay the claim. Then I become a complainant. So we need to ensure that these terms are defined in a consistent manner and they're understood by everybody in the company for us to be able to comply with IFRS 17. There are disparate data sources. Most of our companies operate fragmented and complex legacy infrastructure. As I've said, we need all this information when we have to ensure that we comply with IFRS 17. Where I sit, you find the company has the core system, which does underwriting and claims. Then the finance, they have their own system. So when the information is being transferred from the core system to the finance system, there is some manual intervention and some shadow IT systems that are done. This will not facilitate compliance with IFRS 17. Moses is telling me my time is almost up. I've talked about granularity and standardization. It's a big challenge in our market. I happen to be in charge of AML CFT supervision at the authority. And for 3 years now, we've been trying to collect data from the industry to profile the companies. Under AML CFT, you are supposed to profile your customers. And we ask that information. And we get information from different perspectives in the company. But we get information from the same company, and it's not the same. In June this year, I had an opportunity to meet with most life underwriters, and I was taking them through the information that they provided. I've asked for this information from this perspective. I'm asking the same information in a different perspective, so I expect the numbers to be the same, but the numbers I'm getting are totally different. You need to define the data process to be able to comply with IFRS 17. And the steps must clearly be defined and automated. Before I read my way forward, let me just pick from what I got from the presenters yesterday. For us to be able to comply with IFRS 17, we need leadership. Management must provide leadership. How can we use technology to ensure that we comply with the standard? It was said yesterday that there is a disconnect between the people on the ground and the actuaries and the finance people to be able to comply with IFRS 17. We need to work together. As much as it is an accounting standard, it requires everybody in the company to work together towards the same goal. That is the way to comply with the IFRS 17. I've talked about that. We were told that we are a bit complacent when it comes to capacity building. We need to have the right skills to be able to comply with the IFRS 17. And some of the data that we require resides elsewhere. The insurance brokers, they do a good job, but they guard the data from their clients very jealously. They don't want to share with the companies. When we were doing AML CFT supervision, before, the insurance intermediaries were not reporting institutions. And we realized that that is a challenge for the insurance companies to comply. So we were able to discuss with the National Treasury and the Financial Reporting Center. And from the beginning of this year, insurance brokers are reporting institutions. So they now have an obligation under the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act to comply with the IFRS 17. Some of the data that we require resides with the brokers. How do we get that data as insurance companies? There is need for us to know at what time do we cooperate and at what time are we going to compete. We talked about today, I got from the deputy director, that we should be selective on the risks that we underwrite. As you can see, you must identify from inception which insurance contracts are profitable and which ones are not profitable. So we have to be very selective on what risks we bring to the books. So this is what I heard from my way forward. We need a data management framework that dictates enterprise-wide rules for how data is collected, stored, transformed, distributed, and consumed. We need to migrate from the silos structures to an integrated approach. And as companies, we need to verify the quality and granularity of the data that we hold and integrate past, present, and future data. I've talked about the right mix of skills and capacity and cooperation, not just across the functions, but with other relevant stakeholders. The Commissioner for Data Protection talked about data portability. I remember some years back when we revised the rates for motor vehicles and there was the no claim discount, but it hit a snag and it died a natural death because we don't want to share information. We've now been told data portability is a right. So some of the data may be residing with another insurance company. With the way we are now operating and we don't want to share data, how will we get that data to be able to comply with the IFRS 17? And with those few remarks, I hope I've added something towards compliance with the IFRS 17. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mary Koivu from IRA. Please let us give another round of applause. Just to summarize, I think she talked about data as a driver of success, and she went into quite a bit of detail on the new IFRS 17 standard and what it means for us and the need for collaboration between various players within the entities, that is the actuaries, the accountants, the underwriters, the claims analysts. She also talked about the need. She said there would be no IFRS 17 reporting without, of course, sorting out the data. So thank you very much, Mary. So at this juncture, I would like to open it up to the floor on the various questions that we may have for our two panelists. I see the data commissioner may have stepped out, but I don't know whether we have a representative from that office to take some of those questions. So maybe I'll just start by asking our regulator, our insurance regulator, in terms of the requirements, is there a compliance fund for the underwriters? Because I know yesterday one of the CEOs said, we have data requirement, the requirements of the Data Protection Act, we have requirements of the Insurance Act. So how do we mitigate that compliance factor?
Thank you, Moses, for that. Unfortunately, most of the companies take the compliance and put it separate from our business. But there is need to integrate it in our day-to-day work. And that will make our work easier. The purpose is to facilitate the work that we do. Like risk-based supervision it is for the benefit of the companies. That if you embrace the risk culture, that in whatever action you take, you assess the risk. We are experts in risk management, and I don't need to go deeper into that. And someone said this morning, if we avoid risk, then what business are we in? We are here as an industry to offer risk management solutions. So let's accept the risks, but put in place measures to mitigate the risks to the level that we accept as a company. That is what it's called risk tolerance and risk. Yeah, so you have to determine as a company. So all these, let's not look at it as separate from our day-to-day. Let's bring them and merge them with our day-to-day business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. I don't know whether we have questions from the floor. Yes, sir. So we'll only take 2 questions because of the time.
Thank you, and thanks, Mary, for that section. It's very well done. I'm asking, okay, there's that requirement of reporting it account on its own, whether it's if it is a loss making, whether there's a requirement of maybe increase of capital to the insurance company. An account can perform well 1 year, and the following year it will perform. I mean, it can perform better, worse in 1 year, the next year it performs well. Maybe, I don't know, maybe, I don't know what is the duration of analyzing that account performance.
Thank you. I think we'll take 1 more question, then we'll allow Madam Mary to respond. Is there any other question from the floor? Yes, madam.
Thank you very much. The commissioner had to leave, sorry, because she had another meeting. So, but she said we can send questions and they'll get to her and they can be answered. Just first of all to put that clear. Then in terms of the question I want to ask is more general. From the regulator's point of view, where do you think the insurance industry is in this compliance? Is there much that requires to be done, and how can we collaborate so that we make sure that there is opportunity for members to have more time to know what they are supposed to do, so that that can be provided in our continuous professional development? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Director. So I think maybe you can respond. Oh, sorry, there's one final question.
Mine is not a question, is that just to let everybody know that if you are a data, there's an obligation under the Data Protection Act, that if you are a data controller or processor, which I believe all insurance companies are, including the regulator, you have an obligation to appoint a data protection officer who must be well versed with the provisions of data protection and advises the company and the persons they are collecting data from about their rights under the Act and another constitution.
Thank you, Director, for that clarification. I think maybe you can answer the questions.
I'll throw it back to Moses before he crossed over. He was in a committee. So he can comment from that on awareness. I mean, the readiness, how ready is the industry? And maybe some of you can assist us to tell us how ready are you? And then on the issue of the contracts.
Thank you, Mary. I think you have ambushed me, but before I moved to policyholders compensation fund, I worked with the IRA, and I remember there was a survey that was done on preparedness for IFRS 17, and actually most of you responded, and the compliance at that time was around, I would say 50%, but that was very early in the year. So we expected to possibly issue another study or survey on the subsequent implementation, which I think the regulator could possibly be working on that currently. But we do believe that, that companies, because of the timeline, which is of course 1st of January 2023, most companies should be almost 90% compliant. And in any case, the Insurance Act requires that you comply with the IFRS 17. So I think there's no option there. Yeah, thank you. So on the issue of how you determine whether a contract is onerous or it can subsequently change from profitable to onerous, I think there are three buckets in which the actuaries can actually place those specific policies. And they are able to give that determination at the onset. So if you do have that likelihood, or you feel there's a likelihood that it will change from being profitable to onerous, you will actually need to put it in that bucket. There's a second bucket between the onerous and the profitable. So that one, your actuaries will actually do that for you.
Then just to comment, I think as an authority, we are working on a guidance note, which will issue very soon, but still, it's the companies to prepare. As much as we'll issue that guidance note, it will just to guide the industry. But a lot has to be done by the industry. And some companies, they've set up projects. There are companies which have set up projects as early as last year. Yes, they've set up projects, they brought together the required skills to work towards ensuring that the companies comply with the standard. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Angela. I also happen to sit on the ACCI board, and I wanted to make a comment. We recently carried out a survey to see how prepared the companies are for IFRS, and maybe I can share just a few highlights that came up from that survey. So one of the issues that came up clearly was about 50% of the companies were adequately prepared, more or less. However, there were some challenges in terms of skills, challenges in terms of uniform regulatory guidelines, and I'm sure ACCI has taken it up with the regulator. Lack of affordable IT systems, and I think that's the resources. Lack of data, which I think is what Mary was talking about today. And then also on clarity on a few issues here and there. And one of the interventions we are considering as ACCI is to carry out, to come to look for the possibility of securing an IT system that can be used by most of the insurance companies, rather than they go for one on their own. However, I know there's a lot of interaction between ACCI and the regulator in that regard. Yeah, so I just wanted to share a bit of that because we did carry out a survey recently. Unfortunately, it's the time. I don't know if we have time.
I think the time is only 2 months.
Yes.
So thank you very much. I think we are out of time, but I think join me in giving a hand to the two presenters. This time I invite the MC to take us through the
another round.